Neither him nor anyone else ever dreamt of thinking that Skepsis was Troy. Heinrich Schliemann.
Bindis peria sopeli tandatan uprobindeba Ari shveni sitsotskhale chitivid gaguprindeba Ari shveni sitsotskhale chitivid gaguprindeba.
How much do we trust history? How strong is our habit to think that the history we know is the truth proven and confirmed long ago and forever? How ready are we to accept that the historical truth with which we've been living all our life can stop being such in a moment? As it's well known, the Ukrainian project Between Two Iberias has been proving for the last 10 years that the ancient world used to speak languages of the Kartvelian, which is Georgian, language family. Sooner or later, it was doomed to go outside just linguistic frames and show something totally unbelievable. And that's exactly the way it happened. On the 10th year of work, the project Between Two Iberias, based just on the linguistic analysis of world's toponyms etymologies, has established that the sea level of 3,000 years ago was 120 meters higher than today. It was immediately followed by discovery of the true Troy that made the official science doubt its very sacred dogmas.
It all started with the Kartvelian, in plain words Georgian, interpreting of words from the world's languages and world's toponyms in particular. Those who haven't heard yet about our work may have questions as to the claim that Kartvelian roots are found in the majority of world's languages. But those questions will have no relevance just upon a quick glance at the results of our research. The project includes already more than 10,000 etymological articles which are freely available on internet. One might not agree with 10 arguments or 100, but there is little sense in trying to bash a system of 10,000 arguments. The languages that have clear Kartvelian origin are languages of Ukraine, languages of Baltic, Pyrenean, British and Scandinavian countries, as well as languages of France, Poland, Italy, North Africa, Middle East, North India, Turkey. The Kartvelian origin of languages of both Americas, Central and South Africa, Japan and Oceania is incredible, but nevertheless proven. The research is totally scientific, being a combined comparative analysis of morphology and semantics. First, the words are split into morphemes, and then their semantic meaning is established within the same language where the word had split morphologically. As a result of such a comparison, the word's etymology inevitably turns out to be Kartvelian, in simple words, Georgian. We can't mention in this film all 10,000 articles, so we'll focus on the most stunning.
Small rivers. What about the biggest Ukrainian river? What about the heart of Ukraine? What about the heart of myself? Because I have lived all my life on the banks of what, for me, the most beautiful river in the world, which is Dnipro in Ukrainian or Dnieper in Russian language. We all remember, the people who live here, we remember from the childhood that Dnieper used to have other names in ancient times. It used to be called Danapris and it used to be called Borisfen. I remember it pretty well from the time when I was 5 years old. My father told me about that. I remember it, and both the Napris and the Borisfen. Now I know where those names came from. We are interested in the word Danapris. That's the name under which the river is mentioned in the work of Constantine Porogenes. If I'm not sure if I pronounce correctly in English language the name of this Byzantine emperor who left a wonderful historical account of the ancient history, first of all, the ancient history of Ukraine. And he mentions our river as Danapris. You can see that from his from the quote from his original text in Greek language. At the same time, another historian, that's a God historian, well, actually, ancient German historian, who lived prior to Constantine. His name is Iordan. He's very famous, and he mentions this same river in the form of Danaper. You can now compare Danaper against Danapris, and those who know Georgian language, they immediately understand that we are talking here about the same word, but used in nominative case and in genitive case. Exactly how it happened with the word araperi, that would be araper if we take out the nominative case ending. Araperi turns into arapris in genitive case. Araperi is nothing. Arapris is what we reply to thank you in Georgian language. That means actually for nothing or of nothing. Well, the equivalent of don't mention, English don't mention. So it's a very popular word, and we know that arapris is a genitive case of araperi. Absolutely identically, danapris is a genitive case of danaperi, and we find this word danaperi, which is danaper in the book of Iordan. We find this word danaperi in the dictionary of Georgian language, that would be metal plated, or more exactly metal colored. For dana being a sword, and peri being a popular word used to make names of colors. For example, coffee color would be kavis peri, for kava being coffee and peri being color. Orange color would be naringis peri. Violet would be is peri, for ia being violet. Similarly, dana, a sword, and danaperi would be sword color of metal. Those who live here, they know that that's a perfect description of the color of our river during the most part of the year, especially in winter and well, especially when it's cold. The color of the water in our river is exactly metal, and that's how we see that the key, the absolute heart of Ukraine and Ukrainian history and Ukrainian toponymy is a pure, impeccably pure Georgian word. And what about, we're talking about Ukraine, what about Russia, so-called Russia? Actually, it's quite a different world because most Russian people have nothing to do with Slav people. They are, in fact, the Uro-Finnish people. But the relations, the connections definitely existed in ancient times. The mutual penetration is obvious, and in particular, we know that such a toponym as Moscow, or more exactly Moskva, that's the way it is known in Russian language, Russian and Ukrainian language, is now we can prove that, undoubtedly, we can prove that it's also a purely Kartvelian word. No matter how astonished the Russian people are going to be. So Russian philologists themselves, including Grigory Ilinsky, that's the star Russian linguist, they insist that the root Mosk used to mean in so-called pra-Slav language, which never existed, it used to mean viscous. You know that Moskva, first, that was the name of a river that flows across today's Moscow, and only then it started to be the name of the city as well. So what is that language where the root Mosk, as the Russian linguists claim, means viscous? What is that language? Do you know? Did they know? No, nobody knows, but now you will do, because it's only Georgian language. That's the dictionary of Ariane Chanduria, where you will find exactly the word Moscow or Moskelo as its alternative in the meaning of viscous. Moscow, viscous, Moskva, that the typical Megrelian masdar, and in that would be viscous. And to impress you even more, we now can prove you that Moskelo or Moscow is pure Kartvelian structure in order to avoid accusations of borrowing this word into Georgian language from somewhere. More, that would be a typical Kartvelian prefix, that means movement towards the speaker, while the root here will be scaly, that means thick, and viscous as well. So it used to be Moskelo with L finally omitted, and we ended up having Moscow, which turned out to be the name for that river and city in Russia. And finally, almost all the Megrelian surnames, trademark Megrelian surnames ending with awa, as well as ia or ua, have their twins in Ukrainian language, all ending with enko. That's the most popular Ukrainian surname ending, added to this exactly to the same root, like Kirtava, Kirtenko, Kilanava, Kilanenko, Kveselava, Kveselenko, Cheminava, Cheminenko, Tsitsava, Tsitsenko, Marshava, Marshenko, Babilwa, Babilenko. All both Ukrainian and Megrelian surnames are really existing. You can check it yourselves. Kvartsenko, Kvartskava, Gurjenko, Gurja, Darchenko, Darchia, Jaburenko, Jaburia, Lezhenko, Lezhava, Berulenko, Berulava, Galdenko, Galdava, Kukulenko, Kukulava. In all those cases, we clearly understand that, we Ukrainians, we clearly understand that we don't have explanation for those roots. The explanation, you can find explanation only in Kartvelian family. So they are not interpreted from the Ukrainian point of view, but they are interpreted from the Megrelian point of view. So they were borrowed. The roots were borrowed into Ukraine from Megrelian people. Do you have any idea about the etymology for the word boy? Now you will have. In the Megrelian dictionary of Otarika Jaya, you will see the word boshi, which is the fundamental Megrelian word meaning boy. You will see it in a different form, boi. As I told you, Megrelian language is known for omitting the consonants. And that's an example where the consonant sh is omitted, and boshi turns into boi. But that's exactly what boi is, and that is exactly the etymology for this English word. The etymology for this English word is Megrelian. You are Megrelians. I already told you about the va or vo negative prefix of Megrelian language, which means no or not. And now you understand the difference between man and woman. What kind of vo is that? That's a negative Megrelian negative particle, which means not. We have man and not man.
You won't believe your eyes, but the word Barcelona can be found in the Megrelian dictionary of Alio Kobalia in the meaning of old forest. The Basque people call their biggest city not Bilbao, but Bilbo, and they don't know where this word comes from. Meanwhile, in the Pshav dialect of the Georgian language, this word means grassy field. If you are concerned as to the reaction of the official academic circles to the project Between Two Iberias, then the linguist number one in the world, as he is called in internet, Noam Chomsky, sincerely confesses that he has no clue on that topic. It's not a problem. If Chomsky and his MIT have no clues, we do have a lot of them here in Ukraine. I hope that these examples convinced you enough that the etymology of most words of the world should not be sought in the fictitious and never-existing Proto-Indo-European language, but in the real and ever-existing Kartvelian languages. If suddenly this story did not make an impression on you, it no longer matters. Now you will understand why. Sooner or later, the turn of the Kartvelian interpretation of the word Israel, or more precisely its more international version of Israeli, should have come. Not only because Hebrew words massively show Kartvelian origin, like Phoenician, Canaanite or Lebanese words and place names, but first of all because the Kartvelian construction of the word Israel is visible to a child.
Here are the official etymologies of the word Israel. God persists or rules or struggle with God. Sure, it shouldn't be taken seriously. Morphology is absent here at all, while semantics is unprofessional. Besides, in general, the official etymologist's position is that the interpreters haven't come to consent as to the origin of this word. That means that Israel doesn't have and never had any etymology. Any argumented version automatically climbs the top spot in the list of proposed interpretations.
So, since Israeli ends in the Kartvelian suffix of the adjective el and the Kartvelian ending of the nominative case e, you need to look for the source word ending in a. Such words are exactly what the adjective aeli ending is formed from, as for example in Karachaeli or Nanaeli. In our case, it should be the word Isara. The first A may be omitted, which is very typical for the rules of Kartvelian morphology, turning into Isra, and from it, Israeli. Such a word, Isara, can indeed be found in the Georgian dictionary. As you can see, this is a long, narrow peninsula. So, if Isara is peninsula, then Israeli is an adjective peninsular. Land, for example. The rules of Kartvelian word formation are perfectly followed. But what does Israel have to do with peninsulas? Today it is difficult to imagine this country being located on a peninsula, even for a person with a very vivid imagination. But it has not always been so. In the 12th volume of the Jewish Encyclopedia, published before the Russian Revolution by Brockhaus and Ephron, edited by Dr. Katzenelson and Baron Ginsberg, you'll find an amazing story about the crevice stretching from the Red Sea through the Dead Sea, the Jordan Valley and Kinneret Lake, and being once a sea basin, something that turns the territory of Israel into an ideal, long and narrow sea peninsula, exactly as the word Israeli implies when translated from the Georgian language. The first picture shows in detail where exactly the lake Kinneret would have an access to the sea if Israel were a peninsula. The exit would be in the region of Akko and Nahariya. The second picture is a killer since it demonstrates that the entire valley of the Jordan River and the Dead Sea are at sea level or even lower. That means with the smallest increase of sea level, this valley would be filled with water. And in which case the water from this valley would connect to the sea can be seen on the amazing website www.floodmap.net. Set the sea level rise to 120 meters, find Israel and make sure that with such a raise, the water of the Lake Kinneret would connect to the sea, turning Israel into a long, narrow peninsula.
So, whether our numerous etymological materials that prove Kartvelian origin of the world's vocabularies impress you or not, does not really matter. Because if Israel used to be peninsula indeed, which is possible only with the sea level being 120 meters higher than today, then the whole concept of the pan-Kartvelian project Between Two Iberias should be considered proven. The last time the sea level was higher than today, as they say, was 130,000 years ago. Meanwhile, the researchers confess it's impossible to exactly reconstruct the rise and fall of the sea level. With the end of the Ice Age, the sea level of course used to get higher because of the ice melting. It was happening unevenly, since the observers recorded certain leaps of the sea level. Finally, there was the deluge, when the water ascended to the unknown level.
Scientists believe that there were several climatic optima, warming in simple terms. They were 800 years ago, then 2,600 years ago, and 4,200 years ago. Each warming implies, of course, the melting of ice, and consequently the rise of ocean level. What the sea level was a result of these melts, we can know only approximately in relation to the last warming, which happened 800 years ago, because a lot of evidence has been preserved about those recent times. How much ice melted and what the coastline was during the warming 2,600 years ago, and especially 4,200 years ago, no one knows. The penultimate cooling 3,200 years ago was exactly in the area of the Trojan War. In other words, on the eve of the Trojan War, the sea level was higher than today. Could it be 120 meters higher? Of course. Was Israel then a peninsula? Definitely. Could it then get its Georgian name? Not only it could, but it was obliged. And all this comes only from the correct, which is Georgian, reading of just one toponym. To the daring claim that about 3,200 years ago the sea level was 120 meters higher than today, there must be evidences, otherwise no one will seriously consider this concept. Such evidences turned out to be plentiful, and the already mentioned interactive map floodmap.net, developed by Samir Burle from India, became the tool for their establishment. On that map you can set any sea level, after which the entire world coastline will be remapped to an accuracy of meters. By setting a level of 120 meters plus to today's one, you get a map of the world of the century of the Trojan War, ideal in preciseness. Traveling by time machine, no less. The first proof is found in Poland. There is a town there called Ostrów Mazowiecka. Until 1926, just Ostrów. The name translates as island. Even if you want it badly, you will not be able to associate it with any island. It is on absolutely dry land, far from any water pools. But the island was just the most ordinary one. It was a water island, just long ago, on the map 120 meters plus to the sea level. And another Ostrów, this time Wielkopolski, also remote from the sea and from any water in general. It's not an island today from any aspect, but on the map 100 meters plus, it is. The third Polish island is the village of Ostrova in Lodz. The sea is more than 200 kilometers away, and there is no water nearby. Now we are relocating from Poland to Milan for a shocking discovery. But first, let's have a look at a website called 10 Weirdest Districts of Milan. With regard to the name of one of them, Acquabella, beautiful water, the Milanese people themselves express surprise and bepuzzlement, since there is no water at all in this district, which is just a strip of greenery.
There is a district in the Italian city of Milan known as Acquabella. The district is small enough for very few Milanians to know about it. The local people, it's here in the southeast of the city, and very few local dwellers know why the district bears this name, Acquabella. Acquabella translates from Italian as beautiful waters. There is no water here, no river, no lake, no anything. So there is no reason for this district to bear the name of Acquabella. There is a legend that the toponym got its name from the underground waters, but it's very difficult to imagine underground waters being called with the beautiful word of Acquabella. Meanwhile, on the map, plus 120 meters to the today's sea level, which was established by the project Between Two Iberias. Not only the city of Milan is a seaport on the Adriatic Sea, 3,000 years ago, more or less, the century of the Trojan War, but exactly the district of Acquabella is its sea embankment. So it was very, very natural. So actually that was the sea coast here, and the name Acquabella has very clear reasons to exist.
In the year 1200 before Christ, the area of Acquabella was the seafront of Milan, and hence the name comes from. and the sea, no matter how hard it is to believe, was Adriatic. There is another town called Marostica near Vicenza in Italy. Now it is of course on dry land, but on our map 120 meters plus to the sea level, it is exactly on the shore. People have been trying to find an etymology for the town. There are many interpretations, but all of them unsuccessful.
The name of the Italian town Marostica interprets pretty well from the Italian point of view, which is that would be a very simple combination of two Italian words, mare and ostica, which would be unpleasant sea. Ostica means unpleasant in Italian. Why unpleasant? It's also understandable because the sea here is shallow, it's very salty, it's stagnated and has unpleasant smell. Also quite a well-known fact. But Italians themselves never interpreted the name of a city of their own, which is Marostica, as a simple combination of two Italian words, because sea is pretty far from here, and no one ever could imagine that the town of Marostica could have any relation to the sea. Meanwhile, on the map, plus 120 meters to the today's level of the sea, established by the project Between Two Iberias, the town of Marostica is located exactly on the seashore. That would be the coastline of the Adriatic Sea.
And only we know that the sea was there and that the name did have somewhere to come from. As part of our project, the Italian Udine also got its Cartvellian interpretation long ago. The ancient form of the city's name was Udene, which flawlessly translates as stagnation or absence of current from the Georgian language. Back then it was suggested that the name related to a truly stagnant lagoon of Dimarano. However, it was not clear whether the lagoon was connected to Udine, which today stands in a distance from the sea. And now everything has sorted out. 3 millennia ago, the Udine stood exactly on the shore of that very lagoon of Dimarano. This example will convince even the most die-hard skeptics. Today, the Tuscan village of Civitella Marittima is 40 kilometers from the sea. The word marittimo is translated as seaside. This city was seaside only in the year 1200 before Christ, when the sea level was higher by 120 meters. This can be seen on our picture. In the same Tuscany, there is the village named Pescia Fiorentina. Pescia is either fish or fishing. Today there is no river, no lake around. But on the map 120 meters plus, it's a sea island. What do you see in the first picture? Right in the middle, below the Calabrian city of Crotone, you see a town called Isola di Capo Rizzuto. Is this town an island? No, as you can see. What's more, it's a headache for all its inhabitants to explain why the town is called island. Especially since there is no explanation at all. They awkwardly suggest that it's some misinterpreted Greek name. And what do you see on the map of the year 1200 before Christ with the sea level raised by 120 meters? You see the same thing, Isola di Capo Rizzuto, only now on an island. Can anyone say which seashore are we talking about here? Costa means seashore, and there is no water nearby at all, nothing. But if you raise the sea level by 120 meters, costa becomes what costa actually means, a seacoast. And with the sea level being a bit higher or lower, the line of the seacoast would go aside. So the sea level should be exactly 120 meters. We established it right. It turns out that there are a lot of toponyms with the name Costa in Italy, and all of them today are in the dry steppe, while on our map they are all on the seashore. You can say that Costa is also Italian for slope, but for some reason they appear only on the shore on our map. The next witness is someone named Leonardo Da Vinci, a quote from Leonardo Da Vinci's Wisdom in the Philosophical Library series. The shells couldn't do all the way of 250 miles from the Adriatic Sea to Monferrato in Lombardia.
Leonardo da Vinci was very surprised why and how in the province of Monferrato there were so many mussels. He thought that those mussels were brought here from the Adriatic Sea by some unknown powerful stream. What he didn't know was the fact that 3,000 years ago all this land used to be covered with the waters of the same Adriatic Sea. Hence the big number of the mussels.
We do not know if medieval psychiatrists tested Leonardo da Vinci for these words, but centuries later we confirm that Leonardo was right. And we show a map of Monferrato covered by the Adriatic Sea. As you can see, almost the entire region is underwater. Whoever planned the trip to Italy must have noticed this direct superhighway from Rimini to Milan in the first picture, on which the very important cities of Cesena, Bologna, Modena, Reggio Emilia, Parma, Piacenza are strung. What is that straight line? Why is it so straight? Why do all the cities look like they were placed there intentionally? The answer is in the picture number 2. It's simple. It was a coastline in the year 1200 before Christ. By the way, Vicenza, Verona, Brescia are also on the shore of the same sea, only the opposite one. The fact that the ancient countries used to be covered with the sea waters, and in particular the presence of the seashells everywhere, are constantly commented in the ancient primary sources.
Herodotus, all the Lower Egypt was underwater recently. In the mountains of Egypt they find seashells. Around the pyramids the underground water is salty. The Ilion Valley near Troy was covered with water. Plutarch, Egypt used to be a sea. Eratosthenes and Strabo, how come that there are so many seashells in Egypt? It used to be a sea. Pausanias and Pliny, seashells, seashells, seashells.
To finish with Italy, the whole territory of Puglia, except for a small island, was a sea in the 12th century before Christ. No wonder the Greeks later founded Magnus Greece here. It was no man's land that just came out from the sea. Now Georgia. There is a small village of Nigorzua on the border of Imereti and Guria. The name ends with Zhua, which is sea. The first picture shows the village today. As you can see, there is no sea around. It's more than 40 kilometers away. And now the second picture that shows Nigorzua on a map as of 3,200 years ago. It's right on the shore of a bay. Let's analyze the name Nigori Zgua. Nigori is an adjective to the sea. What sea is it? Nigori is a Migrelian adjective formed out of niga, which is translated from Migrelian as wooden bucket for milk. Now look again at the first picture. There, near Sajawaho, there is a river flowing. The water in it is muddy white. The soil here is white. You can see it on Google Maps at high zoom. So the water in the bay should have been of the same color as the river. The round shape of the bay only adds associations with the bucket of milk, niga, which is why the sea, Zhua, here is Nigori, or Niguri if in Georgian way. So, Nigorzua. As our friend Gheorghe Dadiani told us, in that part of the world everyone knows this story. An anchor was found on the Mount Urta near the village of Hamiskuri in Migrelia long ago. For thousands of years, no one could even imagine how an anchor could have ended up in those places, until the map 120 meters plus to the sea level showed up within the framework of our study. Having looked at it, you can be sure that all this territory used to be covered with water, and of the Urta mountain only the upper part was dry. The mountain used to be an island. Another colossal pillar fell, and the great and ancientest city of Kutaisi finally found its own etymology. First look at how perfectly the sea bordered the city, turning the capital of ancient Colchis into a seaport. Today, just to remind you, Kutaisi stands far away from the sea coast. There have always been many variants of interpretation of the name. They all are given on the Kutaisi page on Wikipedia. Let's stop at the first one, Quatatisi, which contains an explicit toponym Quatati, the land of Quati. In Mingrelian, Quati is Protonwa, which is sea ripple. The word can be found in the Mingrelian dictionary of Alio Corbalia, but it has never been applied to Kutaisi's etymology. Who could have thought of looking for sea ripples in Kutaisi? But now we know that Kutaisi used to be a seaport, and then from its hills it must have been wonderful to watch the sea ripples. Sea ripples is not a simple phenomenon with its own physical causes. It often occurs in remote bays of the seas. Who wants to imagine what the ancient cities on the islands looked like when everything around used to be flooded with water that rose to 120 meters? Here's the Andalusian city of Arcos de la Frontera.
Остров, на котором находилось древнее поселение, когда здесь было в эпоху Троянской войны. А вот это все было море перед нами. Вадик не верит явно.
Да не, ну, теория интересная.
Не верится все. Говорит, Артем, что ты втираешь?
You can see the levels of the water that was gradually sinking. The uppermost line is exactly the 120 meters plus.
Мы еще сняли остров Великопольский, который доказательство. Мы еще снимем Милан, Орострика и, может, в Утино заедем. И мы снимем Пононское море. А потом, после всего этого, мы покажем Трою. Эврика!
The next island in the Andalusian Gulf was Hibalbin, today a small village with just one street.
Выше этот, не топи шею в плечах, красиво, не улыбайся, мимо нас. А ты не можешь так вот поправить?
The city of Medina Sidonia is believed to have been founded by the Phoenicians, but the only proof is the similarity of the words Sidonia and Sidon. Now we see that 3,200 years ago Medina Sidonia was clearly located on an island. In the article about the name of the Spanish Córdoba city, you will read that the old name of the city used to be Corduba. Here is a map of 120 meters plus, where Córdoba is in the deepest part of a sea bay firmly tied to it. If you had given that bay a name, it should have been Córdoba. And here's Ali Tandilawa's Laz dictionary, where Oba equals to Uba, so Córdoba equals to Corduba. Meanwhile, Ube in Catalan languages means bay. And Cordi in Laz language means belti, which is land. On the other hand, the same Cordi in Georgian dictionary is barren land or meadows. So Cordova or Corduba means desert land bay or meadow bay. Seville seems to be at sea, but literally a couple of millimeters away there is a Salvation Island on which the suburb of Seville, Valencia de la Concepción, is located today. And it's very interesting that there are 3 ancient dolmens in the vicinity of this suburb. And all 3 are exactly within the boundaries of that island on our map of 120 meters plus. The Roman writer Rufo Festo Avieno refers to an ancient source when telling about the mysterious islands of mysterious Tartes, the etymology of which we revealed 7 years ago in our film Kartvelen, Spain. Here they are, these islands, very visible to everyone. The largest of them is now home to one of the oldest and most important cities in the area, Carmona. Without the slightest strain, we can say that this is a detailed map of the ancient Tartes, whose history has been considered one of the greatest mysteries of antiquity, but not anymore. Gibraltar, which, as the project Between Two Iberias proved, is a Basque word, used to be an island. Interestingly, on its rock, at the altitude of about 120 meters, you can see a gentle slope that is supposed to have been coastal sea bottom. Puerto de la Torre is located above Malaga, 8 kilometers from the sea. Puerto means port. Meanwhile, its vicinity doesn't show any sea nor river. Everything becomes clear as soon as we get in our time machine and go to the year 1200 before Christ, when the sea level used to be 120 meters higher. Puerto de la Torre instantly becomes a clean port. Those who have watched our series about a trip to Spanish Cantabria, where the name of the local town of Santillana del Mar was explained, should remember that there is no Llana, nor Santa, nor Mar, according to the local residents. They say that the name of the town does not have anywhere to come from. But now we know and we understand that at least Mar, which is a sea, used to be there. The city stands exactly on the shore. And what about the name of an Asturian settlement, Las Arenas, meaning sands, in the Picos de Europa mountain park? It's a rhetorical question. It's incredible, but you can even see on our map the same reef in Portuguese Braga, after which the city was named with the Georgian word Braga, which is reef. Why on earth you should consider Georgian etymologies for Portuguese toponyms will be clear upon listening to a short story about the Kartvelian origin of Portugal itself.
What I'm keeping in my hands now is the etymology for the word Portugal. The thing is gonna be really tricky, so you better be sitting now. The first thing to remember is that the letter, both letter and sound f, are an artificial thing. In ancient languages, they used to be p aspirated, like p. That's the reason why in English language the word photograph is spelled through ph. In Georgian language, the queen's gem, which is very orange in color, used to be the only source for the orange color actually. And in Georgian, in ancient Georgian language, queens used to be hore. On the other hand, in Greek language, for example, orange is portokali. Many people know that. Fewer people know that in Georgian language it will be almost the same, portohali. But if from the Greek point of view the word does not split into morphemes, from Georgian point of view it splits into morphemes beautifully and ideally. Por, as we have already known, is orange color, while tohali means grub or food. It's a derivation from tohi, which is an instrument to till the land, and hence tohali would be something that was obtained by means of tilling the land, which is food. So portohali would be food of orange color, a beautifully Georgian word. The only thing that we lack is a connection between the notion of orange and the notion of Portugal. It is easy. This orange is called sweet orange, which has its alternative scientific and legitimate version, which is Portuguese orange. So remember very well, Georgian, Portuguese people, and everybody else. The word Portugal, in fact, is orange, which is portohali, which is food of orange color, And you have known that that's a beautifully and perfectly and ideally Georgian word, and you have learned that from the project called Between Two Iberias.
Unfortunately, this ancient reef in Braga was localized by our project after we visited and filmed this wonderful city. The former reef that gave the name to the whole city today is the Monte de Cones, in a street of the same name, a small elevation of 40 to 40 meters in the Cabrita area, overgrown with trees. Just imagine, the Portuguese people have been walking by this place for 3,000 years every day, having no idea that the city was named after this hill, which besides bore a Georgian name. By the way, this reef shows that the sea level we set at 120 meters is absolutely accurate, literally up to a meter. Otherwise, our map wouldn't have shown this former reef. Have you ever asked yourself why the main Portuguese cities, Leiria, Coimbra, Guimarães, Braga, are so far from the sea? Big cities just must have been ports, especially if they are separated from the ocean by a short distance. It seemed that Braga, Coimbra and Leiria were built on some second line. It turned out that no, the line was the first one and common to all major cities in the country. It was the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. In the heart of Europe, in the historical region of Pannonia, our map, 120 meters plus to today's sea level, shows that 3,000 years ago, a sea was rolling its waves here, in the very center of Europe. Surprisingly, the conventional academic world does agree with this fact, recognizing the existence of the Pannonian Sea, but without giving it a chance beyond the Pleistocene. But it is not so. We can clearly see a sea on the map where the sea level is 120 meters higher than it is today. Moreover, there is a lot of evidence that the sea not only was there, but it was there very recently, quite in line with our proposed 3,000-year term. The main proof of the existence of the Pannonian Sea in that historical moment is the amazing map of 120 meters plus to the sea level, on which all over the perimeter of the sea we see many ports clearly located on the coastline. Look at the names that were ports on the Pannonian Sea. In Hungary they are Budapest, Miskolc, Debrecen, Székesfehérvár, Győr, Dunaújváros, Kecskemét-Pécs, also both major cities of the former Yugoslavia, Serbian Belgrade and Croatian Zagreb. The other major Serbian city, Novi Sad, was on an island. In Ukraine, both largest towns of Transcarpathia, Uzhgorod and Mukachevo. In Romania, the Pannonian ports were Timișoara, Oradea and Satu Mare. It can't be a coincidence that cities are located exactly on the coastline of a sea. There is a second piece of evidence, extensive and breathtaking. On the first map we see that the Hungarian city of Kiskunhalas stands in the middle of a waterless steppe. But on another map of 120 meters plus to the sea level, Kiskunhalas was the port on an island in the Pannonian Sea slightly after Argonauts furrowed the seas in search of the Golden Fleece. The stunning thing is that Kiskunhalas is translated from Hungarian as cumin fish. Cumin is the name of a tribe and halas is fish in Hungarian. And the city could have got such a name only when there was a water body nearby. That is, when it was standing on a sea island, not like now on absolutely dry land. But the Hungarians have long forgotten about the Pannonian Sea, or more exactly, they never knew, because they appeared in Europe when the sea had long dried up. The country of France looks unrecognizable too on the map where the sea level is raised by 120 meters. Around Paris, for example, even today there is a historical area with inexplicable name, Île-de-France, French island. It's not an island, and etymologists immediately warn about it. On the map of 100 meters plus, you can clearly see what kind of region bears this name. 3,000 years ago, this land consisted of countless islands. And on the Atlantic side, the ocean in France reached Toulouse, making it an Atlantic port. And the isthmus between the Atlantic and Mediterranean Sea 3,200 years ago used to be the short distance between Toulouse and Carcassonne, making these two cities absolutely key in ancient France history. Do you know what Nessos, in the name of the Peloponnesos Peninsula, means in Greek? It means island. And do you want to know why the Peloponnesos, being in fact a peninsula, was called island? Because it indeed was an island at the sea level of 120 meters higher. There was no Corinthian isthmus back then. As it's known from Greek myths, the famous Greek Thebes was founded by Phoenician Cadmus. And the world science wonders how the Phoenicians could have founded Thebes if Thebes was located far from the sea. Meanwhile, on the map of 120 meters plus, Thebes is located right by the sea. So it's not a myth, it's a historical fact. Thebes was really founded by Cadmus, who came to this area by ship, as a true Phoenician should. Another great example, Turkish city of Balıkesir, from the Turkish language point of view, is ideally split into two clear Turkish roots, Balık, which is fish, and Esir, which is prisoner or slave. But you will not find such an elementary interpretation in a Turkish article about the etymology of the city's name. But why not interpret it as fish? Because what kind of fish are you expected to be looking for in a city where there is no water? Meanwhile, if you look at Balıkesir on the map of 120 meters plus, everything becomes clear. Balıkesir was a port on a sea bay, and so it had a direct relation to the fish. In Turkey, cities with sea names are very unlucky. Here is Denizli, which literally translates as maritime, but is located 120 kilometers away from the sea. On the map, where the water level is raised by 120 meters, the waters of the Aegean Sea become 100 kilometers closer to Denizli. It is funny, but there is another Denizli in Turkey and also far away from the sea today. And also almost by the sea if you look at it, and on the map 100 meters plus. Now let's review the history of Kiev, which from now on will be 1,500 years older. I always thought that Uzvoz, which we have plenty of in Dnipro and Kiev, is a descent to the river. But on a modern map it seemed that Kiev Uzvozes are something different. That's until you look at a map of Kiev 3,200 years ago, when the sea level was 100 meters higher. The bank line, as you can see, was much clearer and clearly followed the line of Kiev hills. The coastal hills were Starokievskaya Gora, Castle Hill, Shikavitsa and Yurkovitsa. They all bordered water. All Uzvozes went down clearly into the river. Andrievsky, Vladimirsky, Borichiv, Podolsky, Brovary and Borispil airport are on a separate large island. We see a large bay in the place where the Libit River flows past the Bold Hill, the Black Mountain, the Batiev Hill, almost to the train station. Additionally, the etymology of the word Navodnichi becomes clear. A small bay comes close to it. But the most important thing is Glebochitsa, deep place. Today there is more than a kilometer from such a purely river toponym to the Dnipro River. On our map, the Dnipro Bay reaches just Glebochitsa, flooding a ravine which should have been quite deep. So the city used to be on this very place, overwhelmed with Slavic names 3,000 years ago, when the waterline was exactly like this. As you know, there is some tension between Ukraine and Hungary over the Transcarpathian region, where the population is mixed. Both countries are struggling for historical priority over Transcarpathia. Our project puts an end to this argument in favor of Ukraine. Someone on the internet is wondering why Beregove is called so if there are no banks here. Bereg means bank or coast in Ukrainian, but looking at the Pannonian Sea on our map, we see that Beregove was exactly on the shore of this sea. So was Uzhgorod, so was Mukachevo. This proves the Ukrainian, which is Slavic, priority over local toponyms over Hungarian once and for all. We also can observe another Ukrainian toponym called Veliki Beregi, big coasts, which not only is located clearly on the coast of the same sea, but also gives us understanding why the name of the village is in plural. This village has, as we see, two coasts, outer and inner. But the etymology of the toponym, for some reason, is considered to be Hungarian, like if it was a derivation from the Hungarian word berek, although even the Slovaks call it brehi, which is coasts. The fact that the Hungarian word berek has nothing to do with these Ukrainian toponyms is proven a little up the map, where there is another toponym with the same root, and again on the coast, Bereg Ufalu. As we see, even the Hungarians themselves do not see any Hungarian Bereg in this route, but they do see the Ukrainian Bereg. And a little above Mukachevo, we see another interesting toponym, Gliboka, meaning deep. What can be so deep in Transcarpathian forests? Of course, it was a sea bay 3000 years ago, definitely deep, which we see on our map of 120 meters plus and nowhere else. A riddle for Egyptologists. Why is the temple complex in the area of the Valley of Kings in Luxor called Temples of the Sea, Deir al-Bahari in Arabic? Which sea? The Red Sea is 150 kilometers away. The Mediterranean Sea is 1000 kilometers away. The Nile here is less than a kilometer wide. So, what sea? Meanwhile, on the map 120 meters plus, the temples of the sea are exactly on the Nile coast, which in that century was 15 kilometers wide. That is a sea, because you can see the opposite shore at this width. We have the following information from Herodotus. After Pharaoh Proteus, the contemporary of the Trojan War, who first hosted Paris with Helen and then Menelaus, Egypt was ruled by Rempsenit, the richest of the pharaohs, and after him the odious Cheops, who built the pyramids and ruined the economy of the country. Gradual decrease of sea level on the interactive map shows that the place for pyramids is released by water at the level of 50 meters plus. If we believe Herodotus that the Trojan War was 800 years before him, that is in the 12th century before Christ, we should place the construction of pyramids in the 11th century before Christ, and not at all in much more ancient time, as official Egyptology insists. A professor from Oxford sent a picture and commented that according to the official science, all the postglacial sea levels were below today's level. Meanwhile, in our story, the sea level was 120 meters higher just 3000 years ago. That's what today's science is all about. It just doesn't know what happened to the sea level as recently as just 3000 years ago. Another professor from the University of Gothenburg said that science has no evidence that the sea level ever was higher than it is today. What should we do? How can I prove that the Swede is wrong? I think we should find a toponym with the same name island in Sweden, which today is not an island at all, but on the map of 120 meters plus is. There is such a toponym, and it's called Maglo. The Swedes themselves interpret the name as Big Island. Is island in Swedish. But it is not an island. Find it on the map and look at it. It's just part of a dry land. Meanwhile, we look at the same toponym on the map 120 meters plus to the sea level. It is adjacent to two large islands at the same time. And on the map 110 meters plus to the sea level, these two islands plus the third one merge into one really big island, and Maglo is right on it. Indeed, a big island. In addition, a huge mythical island appears on the map of 120 meters plus at the place of the southern tip of today's Scandinavian peninsula, while Gotland, where the Scandinavians are supposed to have come from, goes underwater. They did come to Europe from an island, but from another one. A lot of interesting discoveries gives us the map of Japan, where the sea level is raised by 120 meters. In particular, it's full of toponyms with the root Shima or Sima. This word translates as island, but the toponyms ending in Shima or Sima have no relation to the islands. But we'd rather look at our much more exciting map of 120 meters plus as of 3000 years ago. Hiroshima. literally translated as wide island. There is no island today, but a perfectly visible island back then. It's quite wide. Kagoshima. Japanese etymologists say that the name could well be interpreted as an island, but why on earth? What kind of island is it today? It is not one today, although 3,000 years ago it was a perfect island. Kashima translates as Deer Island, but it's not an island today. Meanwhile, it used to be one before. Itoshima may have something to do with the large island on the south or group of islands to the north. Just note that they all were islands only on our 120 meters plus map. Today, Itoshima is a solid land. A quote. Actually, Fukushima means happy island, but I heard from old people that there used to be a castle with two rivers running around it, so it was like the castle was on an island, so they called it Fukushima. Otherwise, what island? Where is Fukushima and where is the sea? But let's just look at the map of Fukushima on our map 120 meters plus to today's sea level and try to answer ourselves why this place was called Happy Island, Fukushima. Manmohan Sharma, who published Nepalese folklore in New Delhi Vision Books 1978, collected folklore from this country among Nepalese Gurkhas who served in the Indian Army. He begins with Vedic and Buddhist legends that describe the time when the Nepal Valley used to be covered by the sea. Today, such a statement looks monstrously unbelievable. Where is Nepal and where is the sea? But on the map 100 meters plus, Nepal was exactly on the seashore, and that was 3,000 years ago. One of the first maps of the famous French cartographer Jean-Baptiste Delisle de Sales, which he published in Paris in 1792 under the title Première Révolution de la Mer Caspienne, is surprisingly a map of the same very epoch of 3,200 years ago, which we also talk about. It's not known where Delisle de Sales got this information from, but the Caspian Sea is connected to both the Black Sea and the Arctic Ocean exactly as it should be when the sea level rose by 120 meters compared to today's sea level. Needless to say, official science calls this stunning map completely speculative. Who doesn't know the famous string of New England cities? New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington. These are the main cities in the east of United States, built along a clear line away from the seacoast. Meanwhile, on the map of 120 meters plus, these cities are strictly on the coast, and the coast is the line that connects them in a string. And now, some wonderful quotes from Roland Stevenson's book Parime Finding the Legendary Lake and Dalton Delfinis Maziero book El Dorado em busca dos antigos mistérios amazônicos. They fully confirm our correctness as to the sea level of 120 meters plus compared to today's one, which we established was valid 3,200 years ago. Quote, although it was dismissed in the 19th century as a myth, some evidence for the existence of a lake in northern Brazil has been uncovered. In 1977, Brazilian geologists Gert Voltier and Frederico Guimarães Cruz, along with Roland Stevenson, found that on all the surrounding hillsides, a horizontal line appears at a uniform level, approximately 120 meters above sea level. This line registers the water level of an extinct lake, which existed until relatively recent times. Keeping in mind that 3,000 years ago the sea level was 120 meters higher than today, we can have quite a different look at the Argonauts' voyage. Now many details of that adventure become clear, and the mythical travel itself acquires more realistic historical outlines. The Russian translation of Argonautica by Chistyakova has the following phrase. The Argonauts had long sought passage from Propontida to this new sea, and, before the last passage, decided to rest and stopped at the Thracian town of Salmidessa. How can one look for a way out of Marmara Sea to the Black Sea for a long time if there is only one, and it's Bosporus? But if you look at the map of 120 meters plus, you will see that in the area of the Bosporus there are several exits from the Sea of Marmara to the Black Sea, and indeed it could take a long time to look for them, as it's written in Argonautica. The small Asian Cyzicus, where Argonauts had a brief war with the locals, was situated on the modern Cappadoc Peninsula, today's Turkish province of Erdek. But the Wikipedia says that the peninsula presumably used to be an island. Where Wikipedia got this information is also known. It's from Argonautica. A rocky island lies far away in Propontida, against the fertile land of Phrygia. The island is tilted to the sea, but the passage to the land is so shallow and covered with water that you can swim. The shores on both sides are safe for ships. That is to say that the isthmus that connects the peninsula with the land today was not there back then in the times of Argonauts. On the map 120 meters plus, this is an island, which means our map is true, so everything else is true too.
The next account of just one episode of Argonaut's trip both reveals the state of today's science and proves accuracy of our 120 meters plus map, as well as the Kartvelian nature of Minoration toponyms.
Salmudessus, according to the stories of ancient storytellers, Apollonius first of all, was a city in Thracia in which the Argonauts stopped before passing through the Symplegades and reaching the Black Sea. There they met the local king Phineus, who told them about the Symplegades. That means Salmudessus was in Propontida, the Sea of Marmara. Any child who'd read about Argonauts would say that. And that's when the miracles begin. The modern historical science identifies Salmudessus with the Turkish village of Kiyiköy, placing it on the Black Sea coast of Turkey, almost on the border with Bulgaria. Of course, on the other side of the Bosporus. See for yourself on the map of the Argonauts' route where Salmudessus is located according to official science. How could Argonauts ask Phineus how to get into the Black Sea if Salmudessus itself was in the Black Sea? Does it mean that Argonauts exited the Sea of Marmara, passed through the Bosporus, sailed into the Black Sea towards Bulgaria, then saw Salmudessus, asked the local king how to sail to the Black Sea from Marmara, he told them in details how, they went back through the Bosporus, turned around and sailed again through the Bosporus to the Black Sea as explained to them by Phineus. And it's not funny, it's the official position of the historical science. By the way, Kiyiköy translates from Turkish as coastal village, and the coast must be maritime. I think that the solution is in the name of the village of Kiyiköy. There are two settlements with the name Kiyiköy in Turkey. One is where Salmudessus is shown today, on the Black Sea coast, and the second is where I showed the alternative exit from the Sea of Marmara to the Black Sea, in the area of 120 meters plus to the sea level. The village of Kiyiköy is on a, despite that the name translates as coastal. Anyway, that ancient mysterious source which identifies Salmudessus with Kiyiköy meant this second Kiyiköy, not the Bulgarian one. That's why ancient Salmudessus is a modern Turkish town, Hendek, and Argonauts sailed into the Black Sea here, not through the Bosporus. But all this story becomes possible only and exclusively in the paradigm of our mysterious deluge, which raised the sea level to its maximum altitude.
The story of Argonauts' way back home from Colchis is even more exciting. Apollonius of Rhodes says that Jason was escaping the Colchians not through the Bosphorus, but by the Danube. Who has at least some geographical knowledge can imagine where exactly one can escape by the Danube today. That would be Belgium at best.
But that's today. 3,000 years ago the picture was different. We saw it many times on the map, 120 meters plus to the sea level. The Danube estuary was huge, and it was divided into two arms by a large island called Pine in Argonautica. After that, Apollonius has a completely killer phrase. And then they sailed into the expanse of the Cronian Sea. This is how our inner European Sea, which I have so far called Pannonian Sea, and around which the European capitals and major cities had been founded, got its second official name, Cronian Sea. Historians simply did not know that in the center of Europe, during the Argonauts' epoch, there was a sea. Right after entering the Cronian Sea, Jason saw two islands protected by Artemis. And then there were two more, apparently more significant islands because both had names. They were captured by the Colchians. The first island is Salangon. It is purely Kartvelian toponym formed by adding the toponymic sa prefix to the root Langoni. This root can be found in the last dictionary where it means dog. So Salangone is land of dogs. Which dogs? It's a local sheepdog, Voivodina pulin, one of Europe's oldest breeds. The Vojvodina region covers exactly this territory with the extinct island of Salangon on it, where the famous Deliblatosens are now. Moreover, this is a photograph from the internet of Vojvodina's pulling dog right among the Deliblatosens. It just can't be more perfect. That's what time travel is all about. Nobody ever knew anything about this island. Now you know, and you even see it, although it's been gone for 3,000 years now. The next island, captured by the Colchians, was Nestida. The next island on the map is where the Serbian Novi Sad is today. So, next to Novi Sad, there is another town named Neštin, which obviously gave its name to the island. Then Jason goes to Elektrida Island, which is the closest to the Eridan River. Elektrida was called so after electron, as the Greeks call amber. This is the island on our map near where the already mentioned town of Kishkunhalas is located. The Amber Way went along the Danube. But if you have the Cronian Sea, you will not call with the same name Danube the river that flows into the sea near Budapest on the opposite side to the Argonauts' entrance into the Cronian Sea. Why would you call it the Danube too? For the ancient people it was a very different river and it must have had a different name. It was probably Eridan. In short, the Cronian Sea divided the Danube into Istria, estuary, and Eridan, upper reaches. So the arguments in favor of the sea level being 120 meters higher than today in the 12th century before Christ cannot be ignored. There are too many of them and they represent a system. Moreover, with this sea level as a benchmark, which leads to drastic change of the world's sea coastline, we can do now any incredible discoveries. And first of all, we need to have a look at the sea coastline around the city of Troy, the city that has been provoking people's curiosity for 3,000 years. The fake Troy, which Schliemann claimed to have discovered, is not news to professionals. Even if we don't take into account the Priam's treasure that he falsified, for everyone who visited the Schliemann's Troy, it is obvious that these ruins cannot relate to a city which at the time of the Trojan War was actually the capital of the world. In particular, among the ruins of the Schliemann's Troy, you will see the so-called Royal Palace with an area of less than 100 square meters. This is ridiculous, because according to Homer, the Priam's palace had 50 bedrooms, and the excavation site itself barely covers the area of 150 to 200 meters, which no major city of antiquity could be so small to occupy. However, the reason to reject the Troy found by Schliemann on the Hisarlik Hill is much more obvious. On the map of 120 meters plus to today's sea level, which was valid as we have established exactly in the age of the Trojan War, the Hisarlik Hill, together with the fake Schliemann's Troy, were on the sea bottom. It turns out that in 1977, John Kraft from the University of Delaware drilled a 70 meters well right next to the Schliemann's Troy, and all 70 meters gave a solid sea material, shellfish, etc. Scientists made a very deep conclusion that Troy was on the very shore of the sea. Although if they had drilled in the center of this Troy, the picture would have been exactly the same. Schliemann's Troy was a sea bottom at the time. Apart from locating Troy in the sea, Schliemann makes more serious mistakes. He does not show us a bay large enough to accommodate two huge fleets of both armies for long 10 years. Schliemann's reconstruction simply does not imply any bay. But an even more serious miscalculation is the neglect by Schliemann and other researchers of the only clear reference point indicated by Homer, which makes it possible to easily localize Troy. the confluence of the rivers Scamander and Simoent. The ancient Scamander is today believed to be called Küçük Menderes. It is both so and not so, no matter how strange it may sound. This modern river, which begins on the Mount Ida, has only two tributaries today, Akçin and Kursakli. Schliemann simply ignores Homer's information about the confluence of the two rivers, which by the way also points to the main battlefield. Schliemann doesn't know how much the coastline of 3000 years ago differed from today's, because the sea level was much higher. For Schliemann, the only reference point he cannot betray is Troy's proximity to the sea. But the coastline was in a very different place. Schliemann did not know this and had no reason to suspect that the sea was not at all where it is today. Both tributaries, Akçin and Kursakli, flow into Scamander too far from Schliemann's Troy. That is why Schliemann had nothing left but to forget about this main landmark, the confluence of the two rivers. But this confluence is the main key to locating Troy. There's no way to ignore it. The place where Akçin flows into Küçük Menderes was also underwater at that time, so the only possible option is to merge Küçük Menderes with Kursakli. These are the ancient Scamander and Simoent. There are no other tributaries. The Trojan events could only happen here. And what's more, now we have the magnificent 20 kilometers long bay with many pockets where fleets of all sizes could hide perfectly. Now the most important thing. Today's Kursakli and Küçük Menderes merger site was also underwater. In Trojan times the rivers merged 1 kilometer higher. It is clearly visible on the map. Today Kursakli is a small river, while Homer's Scamander was a full-flowing river with whirlpools. It looks like this on the map of 120 meters plus, where its width is 500 meters. But which river was which? The answer lies in the field of linguistics. Here is the official Greek interpretation of the name Scamander, limping man. And here is the translation of the name Kursakli from the Turkish language, crippled culprit. Limping versus cripple. That's the same thing. It doesn't matter why the river was named so strangely. The rivers are sometimes named after people, like St. Lawrence River, for example. The important thing is that both translations match, and it can never be a coincidence. Moreover, this corresponding of the names of the rivers Scamander and Kursakli is indisputable proof that Troy was right here, 50 kilometers away from where Schliemann allegedly found it. We are right to establish that Troy was exactly here. Interestingly, if you read the Iliad, constantly checking Homer's landmarks with today's map, you are guaranteed to have porridge in your head. But if you read the book by checking the map of 120 meters plus, the picture will be perfect. So we have dealt with the rivers, and now we know where the battlefield between Trojans and Achaeans was. And what about the Troy itself? A quick survey of the surroundings immediately makes us pay attention to a huge hill near the village of Kurşunlu, on the bank of the Küçük Menderes reservoir, exactly the part of it which was called Simoent before the confluence in ancient times. It seems to be an ideal place to hide in its depth the ruins of the great city, and it's totally corresponding to Homer's account. Amazingly, the hill near Kurşunlu is well known to historians and archaeologists. It does contain an ancient city, although the hill, for some reason, is still intact. This city is known as Skepsis. It's right here where the sons of Hector and Aeneas, Scamander and Ascanio, after the destruction of Troy, relocated the whole town with the same name of Skepsis from the top of the Mount Ida, which is nearby, after which the city on the mountain was automatically named Paleoskepsis, which is the old Skepsis. This is what Demetrius of Skepsis tells us in Strabo's paraphrase. That means the existence inside the hill of an ancient city, almost of the same age as Troy itself, has long been known. They only didn't know that the Skepsis was built not on an empty place, but on the ruins of Troy. And it's time to get back to the epigraph of our film. Neither he nor anyone else ever dreamt of considering Skepsis Troy. That is a quote from Schliemann. He had a gut feeling that Skepsis was Troy, but he never really dared to think so, because today Skepsis is very far from the sea. And as for the fact that at the time the sea was very close, Schliemann didn't know and couldn't know. It would be fair to say that there were people who offered to look for Troy farther away from the sea, though without presenting arguments. For example, one of the offered locations was Ezina, on a hill near which there are mysterious zigzag ruins. On our own map, Ezina was underwater. But not this hill. In those days it was a tiny island, and the ruins don't just lie clearly on this island, but literally few meters from the water. Such an exact match is simply impossible to be a coincidence. The map 120 meters plus is accurate literally to meters, and these ruins too can be easily attributed to the era of the Trojan events.
The conclusion is as follows. The true Troy is located 50 kilometers away from the place where it was mistakenly found by Schliemann, inside the hill next to the village of Kurshunlu. The top layer would be the city of Skepsis. The lower one would be Troy. All the Homer's landmarks now represent a harmonious system. It can be verified by excavations, which should sparkle international interest. All the findings will, of course, belong to the Turkish people, while the authorship of the real Troy location will forever be Ukrainian.
A separate, very convincing proof of the sea level of 120 meters plus to the present level, which could be witnessed approximately 3,200 years ago, is the huge number of cities around the world which at that time were on the shores of the seas. That is to say, were founded as ports. Today they are all on dry land. It cannot be a coincidence, as there are more than 120 such cities. And they are all historically important. In many cases, the coastline literally cuts through the center of today's cities, including capitals and megacities. If you are wondering why an important historical city is located not on the sea coast but at some distance, with a high probability on the map of 120 meters plus, it will be a port. One of the biggest secrets of the ancient history is the so-called Late Bronze Age collapse. It was in the century of the Trojan War. Scientists are wondering why almost all the major cities of that time were suddenly destroyed or disappeared, which led to the Dark Age. Sometimes this same collapse is described with the stunning but nevertheless official phrase, a series of poorly understood events. The mystery has been solved, the events are understood well now. The cause of the collapse of the Late Bronze Age was flooding, with the maximum sea level rise up to 120 meters. Maximum because there is no more ice on the planet to melt to raise the level higher. The fact that if all the ice melts, the water will rise exactly to 120 meters is suggested by a scientist at the Carnegie Institute named Ken Caldeira in his article. Everyone knows that the Phoenicians are the most famous sea explorers, who have spread out all over the world, founding all kinds of ancient civilizations like Carthage, Marseille, Tarragona, Barcelona, etc. And no one really knows what eventually happened to them. Their Middle Eastern civilization had tracelessly gone somewhere. Look at the map. All their cities were flooded in the year 1200 before Christ. Every last one of them. Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, they had no choice. They got into ships and sailed to where their eyes were looking. It is possible, by the way, that they sailed to America back then. But that's a different story. The fate of the Minoan civilization in Crete was no less mysterious than the one of Phoenicians. They disappeared too. And guess what century it was? That's right, in the area of the same 1200 before Christ. It's the same reason The palace of Knossos went underwater when the sea level rose to 120 meters, along with the rest of the coast, of course. The third super civilization, which also disappeared in the same century, is Mycenae, or Mycenae more exactly. And again, the same story. The city on the map of 120 meters plus is underwater. Now an important twist. How does the concept of the sea level rise by 120 meters in the 12th century before Christ correlate with different floods and deluges in the world's history? Pretty well, I must say. Of the most famous floods, we remember best the Bible deluge, the Deucalion deluge, and the Sumerian one. In particular, as a result of the rise of water by 120 meters at the time specified by us, the whole Sumer, the lower part of Mesopotamia, went underwater. I think you'll all agree that a capital of the whole ancient world is unthinkable without direct access to the sea. For example, the super city of the ancient Lydia, actually Ludia, Sardis. The guess is right. 3,000 years ago, it was a seashore, and today it's dry land. Ancient Macedonia, the Slavic one, was a serious maritime power. Yes, you heard it right. The Gulf of the Aegean Sea stretched past Gevgalia to Valandovo, where it spilled into a small inland sea. It is the area of Valandovo where archaeologists are looking for the lost supercity of Idomeneo, and now knowing that the city was there, it will be much easier to find Idomeneo. Just a quick glance at the map of the British Isles at a time when sea level was 120 meters higher turns the whole of British history upside down and inside out. It is immediately clear that Wales and Scotland are the original lands of the archipelago. That's why these are the oldest lands. England just didn't exist. It came out of the sea later and was immediately attacked by all kinds of aliens, while the autochthonous people were the Welsh and Scottish people. Keep that in mind. Have you ever asked yourselves why French Brittany is so different from the rest of France in terms of language? And why is its language so closely related to Wales, Cornwall and the Isle of Man? Because it was an island too, just like Cornwall itself a little up the map. In terms of language and now geographically, Brittany is not France, it's Britain, which in fact you can tell from the name. Ken Caldeira from Carnegie Institution, as it had been already mentioned, wrote an article entitled The Great Climate Experiment, available online, which states that if the ice on the planet melts completely, the sea level will rise to the mark of 120 meters plus. First of all, this is another independent confirmation of the correctness of the sea level that we have set exactly at 120 meters plus to today's level. And secondly, it is a proof that in the century of the Trojan War, Antarctica was free from ice and people could live there. In any case, the outlines of the continent's shores were visible, so it was at that time where we should be looking for the key to the mystery of the 16th century map of the Turkish admiral Piri Reis, which shows a surprisingly clear coastline of Antarctica. Surprisingly, Azerbaijan was underwater 3,200 years ago. Now it is clear that with another cooling, the sea level decreased and this valley dried up, and the Azerbaijanis settled at what had been the sea bottom. In this sense, Azerbaijan is an honest country that took nothing from anyone. Although, as for David Garej's monastery, please do not touch it, dear Azerbaijani friends. It was not underwater. The Ukrainian Crimea was an island. Moreover, it was such at the very moment when the ancient sources first mentioned it. Namely, Taurida in the Crimea was governed by the brother of the king of Colchis, Aet, named Perseus, which means he was Colchian too, which is Georgian. So it is not surprising that Crimean toponyms in masses show their Kartvelian origin. Katsiveli, Mshatka, Mukhalatka, Jarjawa, and even the Arabas speak too. Look for details among materials of the project Between Two Iberias. In the Danube Delta on the map of 120 meters plus, we can clearly see the disappeared Pevk Island, the capital of the Scythians Peukins, which is Pechenegs, the ancient Ukrainian Kartvelian speakers, which can be read about in Apollonius of Rhodes' account of the Argonauts' voyage. It's amazing that Karel Skorpil in 1917, in his book Old Bulgarian Monuments,
surprised everyone with the statement that Peuk Island should be searched for on the Babadag Plateau. Nobody believed him. Meanwhile, on our map, 120 meters plus, the Babadag Plateau is located right on the Peuk Island. Opposite Libya and the Gulf of Sirte, which was much deeper back then, as we can see, there is the Platea Island, mentioned by Herodotus, where the precious Silphius was growing. No one has ever even hypothesized where this island might have disappeared to. Remember our article about the Appalachian Mountains and their connection to the city of Apalachicola on the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody doubts it, two words are too similar, but nobody can explain how one came out from the other. Meanwhile, we split the word Apalachicola into Miguelian combination Apala-Chicola, which impeccably translates as a dolphin with a white spot, Apala, and flesh reaper, Chicola. This is clearly the orca, but where could orcas come from in the area of the Appalachian Mountains massif? It was not clear. And now you can see that during the Trojan War, the Appalachian Mountains started right on the Gulf of Mexico coast. As part of our project, we have already talked about the amazingly and inexplicably white and Caucasian Indians of the Chachapoyas region in the Peruvian wilderness. And we even paid attention to the stunning similarity of houses of the ancient Galician Iberians and the Indians of Chachapoyas. It turned out that the Amazon Sea in ancient times came close to these places. We already know that Europeans had visited America definitely long before Columbus, leaving many toponyms of undoubted Kartvelian origin throughout the continent. It's a separate big chapter in the Between Two Iberias project. And now it is clear that European seafarers could sail to Chachapoyas from the north, no matter how unbelievable it seems today. History, geography, geology, climatology, and many other disciplines in South America will also have to be reviewed. In addition to the Amazon Sea, the Paraná River Basin, which stretches as far as to Paraguay, was the second sea. The world science knew nothing about it, ever. So, starting from today, we suggest to consider Troy as found again and truly. The final answer will be given by excavations. But already after this film, the criticists are not going to have enough arguments either. Besides, from now on, the rise of the sea level by 120 meters in the century of the Trojan War will be considered a fundamental historical truth, despite that the official science never suspected that in 3 millennia. Keep following our project Between Two Iberias, or better, join it. Slava Ukraini! The real Troy is here.